So I guess maybe like a show of hands, like how many of you know what DBT is? How many of you use DBT like regularly? Okay, so not that many people. Okay, that's good. So I think like this is kind of like the pitch we have on our website. I think it is true, but I'll get into in the next slide why DBT is like special a little bit. But all of this is true, right? So DBT is a data transformation framework. So think of this as the T in ETL is kind of the best way to think of DBT. It uses software engineering best practices like testing and version control. So and to reduce code, automate dependency management, ship more reliable data, all with SQL. So the last part, I think, is probably best to work backwards from that definition. So essentially, DBT is like really focused around SQL, and it's around building these data transformation workflows in and around SQL. And so you're probably wondering, okay, if this is SQL tool, like why are you talking to a Python group? And trust me, I'll get there. But essentially, I think it's kind of like important to have that mental model a bit. And so you can build your data transformations with SQL, and then you can use a Jinja syntax, which we all know and love, in order to do some dynamic code generation, do do a bunch of like introspective queries where you construct queries from the results of other queries, that sort of fun stuff. And then there's like a bunch of best practices. So like all of your transformations in SQL are versioned with Git, and there's like tests you can write on top of it, which are kind of somewhere in between like a unit and an integration test. And this is really like mind-blowing for data engineering because it's kind of like a huge step forward. Like you're not really just like sending scripts that have v2, v3 at the end of them over like email anymore, or Slack now, I guess. And you actually have like a proper Git workflow. There's like CI/CD, stuff like that. But I won't get too much into DBT. Like if you're curious, come talk to me after. And I think the thing I want to like touch on here, if you could only take away like two things about what DBT is, these would be the two things. So it's declarative data modeling in SQL, democratizes transformations, better align incentives. So I think the declarative part is like really important because it splits out your control. Splits out your control and data planes. So essentially you just have to worry about the transformation logic. You don't have to worry about like where the data is loaded from and like where you're writing to, stuff like that, which is often the case when you're writing something like Airflow, if you're not careful. It allows anybody to basically write these transformations, so you don't have to be a software engineer to write these transformations. I think this is one of the biggest things. Like you can be an analyst and write these transformations. And so it aligns incentives because you're no longer blocked on a data engineering team is like the big thing. And then there's a huge community around DBT. There's 65,000 members in the community Slack. I'm in there, so.
I presume it's limited to 65535 members.
No, it's not.
Oh, that's
so there's a lot of people to come learn from, lead into, and we're sort of like pioneering a new field of analytics engineering. So I think those are kind of like the two big things that make like DBT special compared to a lot of like other transformation libraries. So this is where you can kind of learn more if you're curious about what DBT is. So we have great documentation. A lot of you on your sign-up sheet said that documentation was like a super important thing to you. And so we have great docs on what is possible here. Go use that. And in the Slack, there's a couple of like, Slack is like very noisy place at times. Like there's like a dozen memes and like a dozen jobs that are posted every day. And there's a dozen jobs posted like now. At peak, there were like 30 or so. So there's a local SF channel, and there's also like DBT core Python models.
What's the URL for the docs?
Docs.getdbt.com.
What's that again?
docs.getdbt.com.
Okay, one more time.
Docs.get. It'll be on the slide again.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, and I think we love Python. Like DBT core is written in Python, although for a lot of users that hasn't always been super obvious. We're kind of now taking feedback on, so DBT is like, as it's currently written, is a CLI tool, but we want to kind of create a native Pythonic SDK for what it looks like, and so we would love your feedback on this. And I think if I go into here, there's a GitHub issue. All these links will be up either there, back there, or here later, or come find me. There's a GitHub issue on here with like all the things that we want to do. So we're gonna make a lot of the interfaces like a lot more pluggable, enable new use cases in DBT that are not really possible with the CLI. There's a lot more stuff in there. I won't sort of go on. If you don't know what DBT is, this is probably like a step too far. I think that the thing I'll focus on here is that we're kind of committed to like engaging a lot more closely with the Python communities, like the big thing I want you to take away here. So like March 16 is like the initial commit, but we haven't worked with Python for like a long time. December 21, 1.0 is released. October 22, we have Python models, which essentially allow you to ship like a Python function instead of SQL to your data warehouse. So like if you know like Snowflake and Databricks and I believe BigQuery have the capability to like run Python within there instead of just SQL. So like DBT will help you run that. And we're kind of thinking now about like what does DBT look like if it is just a native Python library instead of this kind of weird thing you have to do now where you have to like do some sort of like sub-process call or like monkey patch DBT internals in order to use it in another Python system. So we want to get there, would love your feedback. That's kind of why we're hosting this today. We also have a conference coming up called Coalesce that is all about DBT. I went last year, it was a blast. If you want to attend, there's a coupon code there, and the call for proposals for that is open now. So if you want to pitch something, either find the link or reach out to me later. And I think that was about it. So join the community, comment on the RFC. The docs link is here, Phoebe, at the bottom. And then also Coalesce if you want to attend. That was it. Thank you. Please come find me later if you have questions about DBT. Would love to help you out. Yeah, thank you.
Very interesting. Okay, so I think also if you could put that into the meetup comment section, put the links
I will.
down there, then everybody, especially the online people, can get to it. So next up, we have the free framework.